Today on Tallidus Plays, we crash a lot. But in doing so, we figure out some tips and tricks for using aero-braking in order to slow our vessel down, to the point where we might even take this poorly designed spacecraft and land it safely with 6 tourists on board. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today on Tallidus Plays, we're continuing our Kerbal Space Program playthrough. And on this episode, we are completing our Tourists Moon Orbital Contract. You might remember we got this contract a little bit ago to ferry 6 tourists into an orbit around the moon. So, we now have the correct engines to do so. Let's design our craft. And here we are. We have our Mooner tourism vessel constructed. Valentina Kerman will be our pilot for the mission. I'm going to put the throttle to about 50% since we have all these solid boosters. We got 4 attached this time for a little bit of extra kick off the launch pad. 6 tourists are on board and ready to explore the orbit of the moon. Without further ado, let's start the mission. And here we are in the vacuum of space. Still a bit more correction to do on our orbit. Need to finish our circularization, but we've got plenty of delta V left. Over 1,500 meters per second, thanks to the efficiency of our new Terrier fuel engine. We'll check the APWAPs here and just increase our speed a little bit to get a nice circular orbit. Oh, there we go. That looks pretty nice. Line ourselves up here. And we can go ahead and fast forward to the maneuver. I am going to put in a quick save now with F5, just in case something wacky happens. Okay. And you can see we're already getting some of our contract parameters complete. Check them out now. All the suborbital spaceflight on Kerbin requests have been completed for our respective tourists. Once we get into a full Kerbin orbit, we should see some more of these messages popping up for even more contract parameters. want to fire about half on either side, so we're going to wait till we get to T-7 and initiate our engines. Again, right here, I'm just going to try to keep our ship pointed directly at that blue maneuver node. 0, there it is. That is circularized orbit. War contract parameters complete. Look at that. For each one of these, we're getting about 10,000 credits. This whole craft cost about 35,000 40,000 credits altogether. So very, very profitable mission here. Let's go to the map and check where the moon is. Set it as target, and let's set up our rendezvous maneuver here. Actually, that's nice. The closer you can get your encounter, rather, to the ascending or descending node, it's actually better because you'll be lined up more appropriately with the celestial body that you're headed towards. So, if we do this, we should end up right on the equator of the moon. That looks good. Again, once we get that encounter, I click the moon and focus view over here. Then you have to kind of click your maneuver node, and you can zoom in and get that nice and snug right up against the moon here. Again, I usually have to go for about 25,000 meters, and that'll give us a nice close orbit, but safe and easy to circularize, and it's also more efficient due to the Oberth effect. I don't believe I've mentioned that on this series yet, but the Oberth effect in astronomical terms is the closer you are to any astronomical body, the more efficient your fuel is when you burn it. Okay, so go ahead and get lined up with our maneuver node. Again, we're quite a ways away, and you'll notice that the burn time is much longer than our previous missions have been, and that's because we're using this little Terrier liquid fuel engine. Again, it's a much smaller thrust than our swivel engine, but it's much more efficient, specifically in the vacuum of space. So that's why we use it for the mission with these 6 tourists, because we're moving a lot more mass. We're moving 7 Kerbals instead of just the one in the nose cone here. Let's do another quick save. And it looks like we might be completing this maneuver on the dark side of the planet, so I'll go ahead and turn on the lights, just so it's easier to kind of keep an eye on our vessel. And we'll fast forward to our maneuver node here. Yes. Again, our burn time is 1:58, so right about T-minus 59 seconds. That'll split either side. 50-50. We will start our engine. So again, now that I'm a bit closer to our maneuver, we'll do one last quick save, and I'm going to speed up just to get a bit closer in time to our window here. Alright, looking good. 59, and we're burning. Full throttle. You see that delta V slowly decrease. That means we are completing the maneuver at the appropriate angle. And throughout this, I'm pretty much keeping an eye, keeping this maneuver node lined up. But what we will do is we're going to switch over to map view with M and slowly watch the teal real orbit start to match with that theoretical brown orbital line there. And once I see the orbit actually begin to interact with the moon, and it gets close to this purple line, I will actually exit from our maneuver while the engines are burning, and we'll keep an eye on our real-time orbit to make sure we get as close to the moon without crashing into it. So let's keep burning here. Again, later on in the game, I might actually use a little bit of physical warp to complete the burns a bit quicker. That'll be primarily for nuclear engines and things that are much more efficient, but also much lower thrust. For now, however, I figure we can wait 2 minutes for this thing to burn and let the anticipation build. See if our 6 tourists will have a safe vacation. 30 more seconds left on this burn. Again, I'm ready to cut the engines at any point by pressing X on my keyboard, which I will likely do as soon as this begins to interact with the moon's sphere of influence. So again, at this point, I usually like to keep it about 10 seconds, so I know that's where we're going. 10, 9, 8. I'll cut this around 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, X. I'm right-clicking on this periapsis, so this is our real-time actual moon periapsis. If I tap Shift, we throttle up just a bit more, and we can dial this in with a lot more accuracy than we did before. Periapsis is getting nice and close. Again, I want that to be about 25,000 meters. Tapping X to cut the engines again. There we are. That should be fine. And before we go any further, check your delta V after any significant burn. That left us with 577 meters per second of delta V. Let's click on this periapsis here and see how much it will cost to circularize. So we're adding a maneuver, and I am slowing down. Basically, I'm scrolling up on my mouse wheel on this retrograde marker for a very precise kind of control of our theoretical maneuver. I'm going to right-click the apoapsis there. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to see how much it'll cost. We also know that this will cost about the same amount of delta V to deorbit the moon and come back towards Kerbin. So eagle-eyed viewers will notice that we probably don't have enough delta V for this particular maneuver. However, all our mission states is that we need to orbit the moon. It doesn't say it has to be a nice, tight, low orbit. So what we can do is get this into what I call a very loose elliptical orbit, which means just enough fuel to slow it down so that we are actually caught in the moon's orbit. So like right about there, we'll go to 2 million. And you'll notice that takes significantly less delta V, leaving us with just enough to actually return home, because we want to bring these tourists back. Otherwise, they're going to give us quite a bad review on TripAdvisor. So I think that looks pretty good. That should suffice for our contract. Let's go back here and line up our craft with that maneuver node. Again, we're pointing at the blue. And here you'll see we're using a little bit of electric charge to control our orientation in space, as well as the lights on the craft. Having said that, I'm going to kick those lights off for now, because we don't really need them at the moment. And again, that circularization burn at the moon is very brief, only 13 seconds. So we're not going to need to burn for too long when we get there. At this point, let's actually check on some of these tourists and see how they're doing. We've got Laggertree and Marford in the top compartment there. So if we click View, we get the internal shot there. Oh! Nice and in-your-face kind of view of our Kerbins sitting at their table, although I'm not sure how useful the table is. They're in zero gravity. Maybe they have magnets for their in-flight meal. Nice little view out the window there. Actually, I think I can see the Kerbal Space Center from here. Well, look at that. There it is. What are the odds? Can zoom out and get a better view of the whole planet through these windows. And again, the unblinking eyes of my tourist companion. There we go. Hey, now we're having a fun time. Whoop. There we go. All right. And again, if you ever are terrified that you're stuck in this view, just type C, and that'll bring you back to our normal view here. All right. I think that's enough faffing around. At this point, we're actually already on the way to the moon, even though it doesn't look like it. We have already done our ejection burn from Kerbin orbit. You can see our altitude is actually increasing dramatically quickly here. So let's do one more quick save. And we can start warping our way away from Kerbin and to the moon. Say goodbye to Kerbin there, folks. It slips into the background there. And if we turn our camera, we should see our natural satellite here coming into view. Just behind the bright sun, you can barely see the silhouette of the moon there. We'll speed up time a little bit faster now. I think we might have a manufactured eclipse in a moment. I don't know. We'll see. Just outside. Okay. And again, you might have noticed on the nav ball there, it just changed because we are now in the moon's sphere of influence. And you can notice our messages have indicated as such. We are now officially flying by the moon. Which means we are actually good to take a few more scientific experiments. Let's take a quick save before I do anything. And we'll have Valentina actually do a little EVA here. She's going to EVA and get an EVA report. This is from high over the moon. So again, fresh EVA report. She's going to board and keep that on board. And let's right-click a thermometer. We'll get log temperature. Again, temperature scan in space while high over the moon. More delicious science. And of course, the mystery goo containment unit. We will do an observation of this, and wouldn't you know it, high over the moon. The goo feels right at home here. So we'll keep that experiment. And all looks well. All we need now is to burn to actually get into a legitimate lunar orbit. So let's warp to that point. And there we go. Tapping T to engage SAS again here. Get our craft nice and lined up. Again, our electricity is holding out. I popped a couple of batteries onto the side of the craft here. And you know that I noticed it. Only one actual battery made it on. I either forgot to attach two, or we might have lost one during the very, very dangerous solid booster maneuver I did back during launch. I don't know if you noticed that, but I decoupled the solid boosters a little early, so they flew past us, and one might have clipped that battery on its way up. Again, here we're waiting for T-minus, let's say T-minus 6 seconds or so, and we'll start our little burn. Again, I'm not even going to look at the map because it doesn't matter. All that matters is that we get into a legitimate orbit of the moon. And then I'm cutting the engines to save fuel. That looks good. Burning through it here. The camera also does a little maneuver once you get into an orbit of a new area. There we go. That's the maneuver there. So it's kind of an indicator that you are, in fact, now in a captured orbit. And wouldn't you know it, more contract parameters are complete. Everybody who wanted to orbit the moon is now technically doing so. So let's check our contracts here. It would seem as though all of our tourists have happily completed their itineraries. Except for one final thing, and that's returning to Kerbin. While we're here, let's do another EVA with Valentina. And grab some cheeky EVA reports, because there are biomes on every celestial body, not just Kerbin. And if you remember our last episode, EVA reports are a good way to get some extra science. Moon's Midlands, we'll keep that. And store it on here. Due to our highly eccentric orbit, however, I don't expect to capture too many biomes. We might get the Midlands, and if we're lucky, maybe one of these craters or a highlands biome. Maybe slopes. It's kind of the Mooner version of shores. But either way, I'm already happy with what we've got. And that also should count for our science data from Space Around the Moon mission, which means we have completed all missions for this particular episode. Yes, we got the lowlands, so we'll keep that and save it on board here. Let me do another quick save, because we still have 460 meters per second of Delta V. Should be enough to get us back home. Alright, and I think that might be all we get for now. You have performed a spacewalk in orbit of the Mun. Excellent. More money and a little bit more science. Also some reputation. If we go back to the map here, you'll see my periapsis is actually pretty close here on this side, so we can probably safely perform our deorbit maneuver. Well, I say deorbit. What I meant is a sort of a disengage. We're going to leave the influence of the moon and go back to Kerbin. And if you remember from our previous videos, we do that by planning a maneuver on the near side, so right between the moon and Kerbin, and we go prograde with this maneuver. There we are. It's a little finicky now. So we go prograde with this maneuver until our orbit is going back out there. Now you'll see, I right click on the Kerbin periapsis, we can plan this out to get nice and low. And I generally like to do an aero capture from the moon to Kerbin at about 40 to 45 kilometers. Usually 42 is safe. So we'll say 42 here. Oh, that's a little low. We want it about there. Yeah, 42 should be all right. And again, that's only costing us 122 meters per second. So we'll have a little bit of delta V to spare, but that's never a bad thing because I can use that at the last minute to slow down a bit more before we enter the atmosphere back on Kerbin. Turn on our SAS and let's move. Again, you can actually keep the SAS turned off and let the craft sort of naturally spin, but when you turn it on, your pilot on board will try to keep the craft stable, hence stability assist, and makes it a little easier to use your WASD keys to point it at your blue maneuver node here. And that looks good. Now, as always, one more quick save. I'm quick saving throughout. At some point, I will probably stop mentioning every time I quick save because I do it so often. But before we start time warping, let's do one more EVA just to see if Valentina can get a little bit more free data. No, that's okay. Put her back on board. And whenever your pilot leaves the cockpit, the SAS will turn off. So you have to type T or click on this SAS to re-engage. Just a friendly reminder there. Now we can time warp to our point, which will be almost a full orbit around. And that'll be the point of our maneuver to return home to Kerbin. And there it is. It was a little bit wonky because of that wide elliptical orbit that we're on around the moon. But we are still orbiting the moon. We're just on the dark side now. And I'm going to speed time up just a bit more to get closer. Again, we want to fire at about T-minus 7 seconds here. And this one's a bit more important to do it accurately because we're going to keep an eye on our Kerbin periaps to make sure that we're not getting too close to the atmosphere. Clicking in the same way we approach the moon, just in reverse. We're going to cut the engine when we get close. That looks good. We'll click X off of that maneuver, and now we tap Shift just to give us a little bit of throttle, and we could dial this in nice and close to our 42 kilometer target. And that looks good enough for me. 44 is okay. That should capture us. Either way, we are still going to end up in an orbit, so even if we skip past the atmosphere, we could just come around again and make our way inside. But we should be captured after one aero brake, so I'm not too worried about it. Hey gang, Tallidus from the future here. I should have worried about it. I should have worried about it a lot. We make a lot of failures in the coming segment, and you'll see when it happens. And again, let's do a little time warping after a quick save as we leave the influence of the moon. We're going to click on retrograde so that Valentina starts pointing the craft in the correct orientation here. Although they seem to be enjoying themselves quite nicely. Ooh, what was that? Right about now is the time that I realize my ship is going a little too fast and furious on re-entry, and I'm going to take a little bit of clever maneuvers to actually get this thing landed. good. Ooh. 1,000, and that is going to be another unfortunate splashdown. Oh no. And yet another destroyed vessel. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to try again, because that's what we do here in Kerbal Space Program. Holding F9 to reload. What are we going to do, folks? What are we going to do? Well, one thing we could do is a little bit more aero braking. I think I had the right idea the first time around. I can aero brake, do a couple passes, keep most of our fuel, and then we'll use all the fuel in space to adjust our final approach periaps. So this is definitely going to be a bit of a montage here, folks, because we've attempted this landing several times now. We failed several times, but I don't want to restart the whole mission. I want to get these 6 tourists home safely using the flight skills of one Valentina Kerman. So, sometimes you need a montage. We're getting very close in our orbit now. Thankfully, we've bled off almost 700 meters per second of extra speed from when we first started initiating this. I'm not sure even at this point how many aero brakes this is for this mission. I think we've done 7 or 8. So 7 or 8 extra orbits around Kerbin to decelerate at a healthy pace. I think we'll go ahead and engage the engine here, use the rest of this Delta V to help slow our speed down even more. This will very likely result in this being the final approach for the vessel. Yes. Actually, we're going to point this up a little bit here. So we don't want our vertical speed to be going down too fast. So that looks pretty good to me. We want to stay almost horizontal here. Got that, keeping that right around 0 for now would be ideal. So pitching up a bit, and that's the rest of our fuel. Stay pretty retrograde. Extend the landing gear to act as a sort of air brake, as it were. Engine goes slightly slower than we are. Final approach. This will be the make or break moment for the mission here. comes the topple. Hopefully we have enough electricity for Valentina to stave off the effects at the top of here. We're going to re-enable electricity from the cockpit. Check, make sure we still have all of our passengers. We do. Just hoping that the speed reduces fast enough for our parachutes to deploy. I know we're going to make the altitude on these much higher. Almost no minimum pressure. So that hopefully they deploy a little bit sooner. All these set. We're going to go ahead and deploy them. And hopefully they come out before we hit the ground. We'll see here. Ideally at 5,000 meters they will deploy. We're going to switch that to above land. Stop looking too hopeful here. We need the speed to decrease a little bit more here. Come on. There we go. Oh, those drogues are whipping us around, and there goes the main chutes. And wouldn't you know it, we are in fact slowly descending to the surface of Kerbal. We deployed at almost the last possible second with about 1,000 meters left to spare. We were going almost 500 meters a second there. So quick math tells you we had about 4 to 5 seconds of a window there to get those parachutes open, but we made it happen. Valentina giving a round of applause. Everybody in the cabin is also very excited, even though their faces don't quite show it. I think they are slightly traumatized, and now they're starting to react with a little bit more happiness there. Slowly descending. I'm enjoying the slow pace at this point because the rest of this mission has been a little fast and furious whenever the vessel got too close to the ground. For our tourists on board, we'd like to thank you for flying Kerbal Air today. We know you have a choice when it comes to space travel, and even though we're the only choice, we thank you for choosing Kerbal Air. Again, the safety exit is located at the very nose of the craft. You'll have to wait for the pilot to get out before any of you can. And do feel free to throw any barf bags that you have filled up during the journey out onto the grass below. We don't want to stink up the cabin for the next group of tourists. Just kidding, we're not using this vessel ever again for a tourist mission. It is horribly designed. Also, if you've made it this far into the mission, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Tallidus Plays if you enjoy this content. We got a whole lot more coming up in the coming weeks here, including more Kerbal Space Program videos. We'll be continuing our career play along here. And touchdown. Like a glove. A little wobbly, but that is a safe touchdown of the craft. We will recover vessel here. And there we are. A whole bunch of more science. We got 102 science added to our pool. Some EVA reports, temperature scan, mystery goo. Got our parts very far from the KSC. That's not a big deal at this point. And of course, all of our tourists got some experience, which doesn't matter. 3 XP for Valentina Kerman. That was her first orbit of the moon, so that's a great sort of achievement for her. Until next time, this has been Tallidus Plays.